This is Daybreak on Trust Television, and it is that segment where we bring you the stories that made it to the front page of select national newspapers this morning. We will begin as usual with the Daily Trust. And the big one there, hardship, Nigeria sitting on the keg of gunpowder. Apparently, the Sultan is drawing from his military background, to drive home the message. And you know what that means.
So do we use expertise to, get rid of the, or do we still pray, for it to go away?
Okay, on the one hand, he talked about prayer a couple of days ago.
Exactly.
But it also tells you how urgent things need to happen. Because as it appears, things are not looking good at all. We will distribute 42,000 metric tons of grains for free, the federal government tells Nigeria. You see, every time the federal government wants to make it look like they are doing something significant, they begin to hide interventions under metric tons and all of this. We did some calculations yesterday. This whole 42,000 metric tons amount to about 940 trailers. If you divide by the 36 states or by the numbers of local governments we have, and you break that into households, you have one person going on with about 0.2 modus of rice. That's just not enough.
So saying 42,000 is a fancy way of making it look like it's enough.
Yeah, this is just.
But it's really not enough.
This is just motion without movement. Yeah. This is not enough. This is not what the country needs. There certainly needs to be something more significant.
And they have to put the free element there to make it look like it's going to be enough.
Well, however,
is this 42 metric tons
42
daily? 42,000?
It's a one-off. So at the end of the day, if you get eight cups, by the way, the picnic cups of milk for a family in a day, and you take an average of a family of 6, a father and mother and 4 children, how long do you think the 8 cups of rice will sustain that family? And it was a serious conversation for us in the newsroom yesterday, because we are talking about a country with 133 million million persons living in multi-dimensional poverty. So even if you reduce this to that 133,
I think that number has gone up.
Let us take it for granted that things have not changed, and you choose to share 980,000 trailers among 133 million people. It's just a spit in the ocean.
The math is not mathing at all.
It is just not marking up. No, crashing of food prices is better. That's what experts are saying. But how do you crash prices when you don't have the product? So it's a function of supply, clearly. And CAN and NBA are demanding concrete actions, while Zulum Abiodun Sanwo-Olu unveils measure. The other big one on the front page would be military busting a gun factory in Plateau State.
This is a recurring thing with Plateau, the gun manufacturing. It's always there. No wonder there's very little peace sustainably for years.
And we can do with some of this ingenuity, maybe in the right place. Maybe something we are not doing enough. Rushing quickly through the other stories on the front page, 60 reps. Proposed bill to return Nigeria to parliamentary system. Let's see how that goes. Upstream Commission transfers over 200 staffs to Lagos. And amidst economic hardship, Trust Radio brings joy to lovers. These are some of the stories that made it
joy
to the
to
front
lovers
page.
Again. Anyway, we'll talk about that.
I'm not sure what that is, but
I really don't know too. Okay.
But it's good to know that somebody is sprinkling some love around this hardship. Yes.
Trust Radio is just a few steps away. Maybe I have to step in there to see what's for me too. Let's take a look at Punch for today. These are the stories. Flying Wigwe, others in bad weather, wrong. And obviously, U.S. aviation lawyer says federal government to borrow over 2 trillion naira via bonds, according to the Debt Management Office. So the debt ceiling, as far as we are concerned, is still going to go up higher. Tinubu governors meet over food crisis as emirs, NBA lament hardship. President governors meeting to prefer solutions. According to monarchs, NBA lament economic crunch, insecurity. Federal government distributes free 42,000 metric tons of grain. Ogun governor rolls out over 5 billion intervention plan. Okay. In other news, technical problems threw 14 Ogun communities into darkness, according to IBEDC. You talk about the underperformance of the distribution companies. This is just signposting it. Technical problems is always a fancy way of excusing your bad behavior, so to say,
right.
or your poor performance.
That's right.
But these are some of the stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
All right, we'll move on to this Nigeria, and it's staying with the constitution of the 45-man committee to amend the 1999 constitution. And but what's more catchy there for me, if you ask, would be FIRS kicking against the 2.5 trillion tax credit scheme for road construction. One government is saying this is the best thing to do, partner with private sector to get fundings to support infrastructure development. Another comes in and said, no, we would rather you give us the money. Whatever you have done has no place in the constitution. And you wonder, you know, this
I like
government...
to give us the money part. It's better.
Well, we have learned that sometimes things are better done by the private sector. So it's a difficult conversation to have in Nigeria, and I hope we do not end up discouraging people who are willing to support this process. One more story, and then we go into the analysis. XG asks Interpol to place 3 Emefiele's accomplices on a watch list, over $6.2 million.
I think this one is going to stick.
It did.
Of all the charges, I think this one is going to stick.
It will, if you ask me. All right, and back to the studio. We have joined us, as usual, the editor-in-chief of Dateline newspaper, Ramadan Nasrul Lawa. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, I'm sure you had looked through quite a number of them, but very importantly, the conversation on the cost of living crisis. We are beginning to see more and more big names, you know, drum support for the conversation around doing something urgently to rescue the average. How significant and timely do you think the comments of the Sultan were as far as this crisis is concerned?
Well, as far as I can see, still the Sultan is trying to not to say these things, because this is a man that just recently, you know, was all over the place asking Nigerians to pray, you know, over the current reality in the country. But now that he is warning directly the government, you know, to sit up, because what we are seeing, honestly, is not very good, because poverty and insecurity, honestly, they don't mix, they are not going to mix well. So many youths are jobless, you know, they are sitting idle, which means they can be used to you know, create one violent situation or the other. And then the federal government coming out to say that this is what they are trying to do, I believe is good. I want to believe that not all of us will actually require the free, you know, give out of the metric tons that they are about to release. But then you even wonder, where are they going to get it from? Because the last time I checked, most of the silos we have in the country, they have been privatized, while some of them are actually empty, or some are in a place where they are actually inaccessible because of the security situation. And then, you know, you have all the people coming out to warn the government. That's if the government is not paying attention. But then, like I started saying, you know, giving people food, that's not what they want. You know, just create the opportunity, create the enabling environment where they can go to their farms. You know, they will be able to do some of these things without having to wait for handouts from the government. So honestly, until the government does well to improve on the security situation in the country, and then as well as the economic situation, I don't see this intervention of 42,000 metric tons doing anything.
But do you also think the government is communicating the whole idea of renewed hope enough? Because some of the experts are saying, show us how you want to do it. It's not enough to say things will get better. What's your agenda? Where exactly are you taking us to? You know, in the local parents, they say they carry us go where we know. Show us where you are taking. Do you think people are asking for too much? Is it too early to be demanding from this president to show us the blueprint of how he wants to change the current situation. I say this in the light of the fact that we understand that there is just about 52 metric tons of these reserves, and you have pushed out 45 in February. This is not the peak of this suffering. We will be in this stretch until August, September, when perhaps new grains will begin to hit the market. What exactly, I mean, do you think people are wrong for demanding that the president comes out comprehensively to say, this is where we are going, this is how we are going to get there, this is what we are going to do to calm the current situation?
No, I think the people are right in their demands. This is a president that has spent, close to 8 months in office now, and so the what do you call it, is over. The honeymoon is certainly over.
That was, if there was one at all.
And even the distribution of the 42,000 metric tons they are talking about, without proper planning, honestly, I see some middlemen, some people who have money with them, moping all these things and, stocking them away and then bringing them out when they are, maybe scarce to continue taking advantage of Nigerians. So honestly, I don't think Nigerians are demanding too much. Like I said, if you had made the conducive environment, available to Nigerians, we wouldn't be talking about all this, intervention and what have you.
If we could just talk a little bit about the developments in the National Assembly. The Green Chamber, less than 1/3 of the Green Chamber wants us to move from the current presidential system to a parliamentary system. Some people are saying, why not? This was how our journey started in the first place. But what do you think about this one? Clearly, it's a long-term thing, which is not something we're quite used to with our politicians, delivering on the long-term things. Yeah. But what do you make of this whole idea?
Well, clearly, this is something that seems to be very dear to the heart of Kingsley Chinda, that's the lawmaker from Rivers. I remember in 2018, he started it, and he had the support of like 71 lawmakers at the time. Now we are only talking about 60. Their argument is you need to do this to be able to reduce cases of corruption, and to reduce the cost of governance and what have you. But you see, the system of government, whether it's parliamentary or presidential, I think the problem has more to do with the players. Whatever the system, if we are willing, if we want to make it work, honestly, we'll be able to make the best use out of it. Because if you look at around the globe, there are so many countries that are doing the presidential system of government, and they are doing very well. And then you also have those that are doing the parliamentary system of government, and they are also doing very well. So it's not about the system, it's actually about the players and then the willingness to play according to the rules. I remember in 1960 between 1960 and 1963 when we started, so many people believe that was the right thing for us, being a former British colony. And then if you look at the military interregnum, their incursion into governance, they are actually the ones who decided, offhand to return us, to change us from parliamentary to the presidential system of government. And I also believe that it's actually too costly for the government to run, because if you look at the cost of governance, it keeps rising. In 1999, when President Obasanjo set up a committee, I think headed by the late Liman Churuma, to look at the possibility of starting the parliamentary system of government at the local government level, so that at least we can now see if there are some gaps that we can try to fill before we make it maybe on a bigger stage. So I think, as far as I'm concerned, it's about the people in the system, not the system per se.
All right, Madam Nasir is essentially telling us that the grass is not greener on the other side. It's green where you water it. But yesterday we got another shocker. I'm not sure whether, as some experts put it, it's the government trying to, pave the way to listen to some of the advice of the Bretton Woods organization. The Minister of Power came out and told us why this proposed subsidy that had been captured in the Constitution may not happen after all, because of a seeming 3 trillion naira debts to both gas stations and generating stations from the government. This is outside other debts that are owed these agencies by government agencies who, because of their nature, have refused to pay bills, like the police barracks, the military barracks, and you can't walk into those places to do cost recovery. You can also not cut them off from the grid. He mentioned this. He said,
try.
well, maybe from a distance. He talked about how these debts would threaten payments, and these gas stations have said we would not deliver going forward until, I mean, they are in business. If you're not getting money for what you have done, what's the sense in continuing to deliver power? What exactly did you make of the minister's briefing yesterday?
Well, you see the power situation in the country, honestly, probably because we sold it to all these people at a very, insignificant amount. So because they didn't invest very well, they were okay with whatever pittance that they are able to make from the system. But I actually like the way the Daily Trust reported the story, because if you look at other newspapers and what have you, most of the reports centered around withdrawing subsidy and what have you. But these are the real issues, because if you are not even able to settle your own payment, your own commitment, you couldn't take care of that. Coming out with things like this, honestly, I don't think it's the best way to go about it. And then if you are talking about the ability to make people pay, honestly, there is a way they can do it, because there are so many discourses that I know. Even in Kaduna, for instance, I know of an area where one of the staff of the Kaduna Electric was, manhandled by some of the residents. They had to meet with the community. In fact, before they did that, they had to took them off the grid for a number of months. So by the time they called them for a meeting, they now know the importance of there is consequence. So if we are able to do that, the people will know. And sadly, power is not like communication. You need all the wires and what have you.
Right.
And then if it is like what we have in the communication industry, you can just take somebody off without.
He talks about that, and just weeks ago we're talking about the new tariff, being jacked up. But the federal government saying, listen, we're going to subsidize it anyway. Just some few weeks down the line, now all of a sudden they're broke. Even the 400 billion that is in the budget, they can't fund. I mean, where can Nigerians find the hope that this administration is trying to renew?
Well, it's like even the government is still it's yet to find its own bearing as far as things like this are concerned. Because if you look at, they're even talking about trying to unbundle the discourse, that if you can make it maybe from state to state and what have you. If you do that, then there are so many states that will end up with,
total darkness.
Total darkness. And you're talking about, dams that are, there to generate 10 megawatts. You're talking about the windmill and what have you. Honestly, we need to do better than, just thinking on our feet and coming out with things that will hardly even work.
Clearly, it does appear that the Power Minister was screaming SOS. I'm not sure who that scream was directed at. Maybe the President, maybe he's trying to get the President, because he talks about they need to urgently pay this money and that they need to be supported by the federal government, whatever that.
It'd be very interesting to know if talking to the media is the Minister's way of talking to the President. Yeah, exactly.
All right. And then we got discordant tunes yesterday from the FIRS, completely discrediting what the government thought was an alternative way of directing finance to some of the infrastructure. We've always talked about finding intelligent and alternative ways of funding infrastructure. Government cannot do it all. And so we talk about greenfield approach, we talk about brown approach, we talk about PPPs. But we know how terrible we have been with PPPs. The Babalaki issue readily comes to mind, Lagos Ibadan, and the second was the domestic terminal in Lagos. That issue has been there for over 20 years. And now we found a new way of doing things with the last government. They've committed over 2.6 trillion in that venture. And the new taxman comes up and says everything that was done is illegal, undo it. After 600 billions have been committed to some of this. Enugu, Onitsha Expressway, Aba, Port Harcourt Expressway, Kanu, I mean, Kaduna Kano Expressway, the Maiduguri Expressway. How do we always find these nerves to just wake up in the middle of something done by a previous government and say everything is bad? Is it that there were no thinking? And even if we find gaps, what should we be doing? Should we rather find the laws to support this operation and engender public confidence or private sector confidence, or we just undo them?
You see, I have always been against this practice of tax holidays. You know, giving some companies waivers. Honestly, I don't think is a good thing to do. Let them pay. You know what they are supposed to pay the government. The government has institutions, agencies, you know, that are saddled with this responsibility of whether it's building new roads, whether it's maintaining them, and what have you. But to say that, and because we don't even have money, you know, sometimes we'll give you the holiday. Before you start working, we'll come back to you and collect more money. So, like, if you look at what is happening in Kaduna, for instance, I think Dangote was supposed to build the Western Bypass. Yes. You know, but because we keep going to him to collect money, you know, that project is yet to, like, you know, it has started already, but, you know, traction. Yes, the pace at which it is moving, honestly, over a year now, but I don't think they have done up to 2 or 3 kilometers. And you are talking about almost 20 or so kilometers. So how do you do that? Honestly, the government, you know, certainly when you see two individuals, for instance, you are seeing two different opinions. So if the past administration believed that's the best way to go about this, and then this one is actually disagreeing, well, it's left to him to show us how his own is going to work better than what the previous administration did. But honestly, I would rather we allow our companies to, you know, do what we're expecting them to do, pay taxes and what have you, and then we also take care of our own responsibilities. That's why we have government in the first place. If we start outsourcing, you know, the things that the government should do to individuals and companies, then honestly, I don't know where that will lead us.
Okay. We always find a way of, you know, analyzing the issues and then, you know, having more questions at the end of the analysis, you know, than answers. But I think we're going to have to leave it here for Amala Nasser as always. Thank you very much for your insight, for your viewpoint on some of these stories that I believe will leave so many Nigerians perplexed about whether we're getting solutions or we're getting more questions
or
about
stagnated, if you like.
Exactly, how dysfunctional the system is. Thank you most kindly for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate you for your time.
Thank you.